Welcome back, Defenders. Every day, the headlines just get dumber and dumber, and we are going to talk about the stock market crash here in the United States. But we should be talking about the peace process. The number one news story in the world should be, how do we get Russia to stop attacking Ukraine? And we've got bad news on the peace front. The Kremlin has now confirmed there won't be a Putin-Trump summit anytime soon. Donald Trump was hoping to meet up with Vladimir Putin, maybe in Saudi Arabia, prior to Easter. This is April 20th, to get some kind of peace talks going, or at least a full ceasefire across the front lines. Ukraine has offered this to Russia since March 11th, and for almost a month now, the Russians are refusing. The Russians don't want a ceasefire. The Russians don't want peace. And they're getting everything they want from Donald Trump anyways. So why do you need to talk to him? Why do you need to meet him if you're already getting everything you want? And Trump's national security team is now advising him to stop calling Putin. You're not getting anything from the Russians. But Trump can't help himself. He views Vladimir Putin as a personal friend, a long-standing relationship in which they've never double-crossed each other. But this is delusional. Vladimir Putin doesn't care about Trump. He doesn't care about America. And there's nothing that Donald Trump can do that's positive to sweet-talk Vladimir Putin into stopping this war or preventing the next war. Meanwhile, the solution is there. The solution has been there the entire time. According to President Zelensky, Moscow scorns diplomatic efforts. Putin refuses even a partial ceasefire in the Black Sea and on energy infrastructure. So a full ceasefire is only possible. It is still possible if the West is willing to put pressure on Russia. If Donald Trump took sanctions to a 10 and sanction enforcement to a 10 and crippled Russia's oil industry, then yes, Russia would agree to a ceasefire. This is something that Joe Biden was never willing to do because he didn't want to see the stock market tank. And we now know Donald Trump doesn't care if the stock market tanks. So why not? Why not release the most devastating sanctions possible on the Russian oil industry to force peace, to force a ceasefire? And Trump just won't do it. Meanwhile, the Russians have really turned on Trump. I think because they've already gotten as many concessions as they think they're going to get, they're now bad-mouthing Trump on Kremlin state TV. Administrative insanity, inexperience, immaturity. Russian media rips into the Trump team. Pro-Kremlin outlets are now criticizing Trump's administrative chaos and immaturity, signaling growing tension, despite earlier support for his stance on Russia. For the last 2.5 months on Kremlin State TV, they've been doing nothing but thanking Trump and sweet-talking Trump to get those concessions, as much as they think they can get. And I think they've realized they've reached their max without actually agreeing to a partial ceasefire or stopping this war. So on Kremlin State TV, they're now turning on Trump. This is a 10.5-minute clip from Russia Media Monitor, and I'm going to read for you just a minute. I'll link the entire thing down below if you want to hear what they have to say about Trump. But they're laughing at him. They're making fun of him. This is what this commentator has to say. Mr. Donald, do you have a plan? There is obviously no plan. None whatsoever. There is no plan at all. It's really something to be doing this without a plan, but I'm afraid that all of it will end very badly. For many years, the United States has been waging war against Russia. I have one question for Donald Trump. Has anything changed right now? You are the president for 2 months now. What is the problem with peace, Donald? The problem with peace lies in you. Because Trump won't forcefully remove Zelensky as president of Ukraine, because Trump won't, I don't know what absurd demands they could make, but they're going to try and blame Trump for the peace talks failing when they just want to continue the war. This is totally obvious. In a situation of historic proportions, you can't act like a thug from Brooklyn. Trump is from Queens, not Brooklyn, but close enough. In trying to make a deal, this historic situation will punish you severely. He is standing on the brink. We'll see what comes. They're just laughing at Trump. They think he's a clown. And instead of peace, instead of us getting a ceasefire from the Russians, what is Trump focused on? Trump escalates trade war with sweeping global tariffs. The EU got a 20% tariff, 24% for Japan, 34% on goods from China. This was a surreal moment to watch. To watch the clip and see this elderly, senile man holding up a big chart of made-up numbers. Completely made-up numbers. Everything that Trump said in this press conference was a lie. So let's start. And Trump says he's announcing reciprocal tariffs because all of these other countries are so unfair to the United States. We're going to announce equal or greater reciprocal tariffs to match what these countries are doing to the United States. So China gets 34%, Vietnam 46%. The good news is the United States just recognized Taiwan as its own country, 32% tariffs, 24% on Japan, 26% on India, 25% on South Korea. And when we got the list from the White House, people thought things were pretty strange. First thing, the list wasn't in alphabetical order. The list wasn't in, order as, volume of trade or size. The list made no sense. And people were staring at some of these tariffs, such as the British Indian Ocean Territory. And this is referring to the U.S. naval base in Diego Garcia. This is it's an atoll. It's like a volcanic submerged island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. This is in the middle of nowhere. This is a U.S. naval base. And Donald Trump just put 10% tariffs on a U.S. military base. The other one that got widespread attention, trade war with penguins. Trump places 10% tariff on uninhabited Antarctic islands. This is the Heard and McDonald Islands. They got a 10% tariff. And nobody lives on this island. This is an uninhabited island where the only residents are penguins. And it's, I guess, controlled by Australia, but it's in the middle of nowhere. And they got a 10% tariff. So people were asking questions, who made this list? Where did this list of countries come from? And people are backwards engineering the formula, and they're figuring it out that the tariffs are not broken down by country. They're broken down by top-level internet domain. It's why islands that are populated entirely by penguins, the .hm domain, and why Diego Garcia .io are listed. Also why Reunion and Gibraltar are listed separately from France and the UK when France and the UK control these territories. The Trump administration used ChatGPT to generate this list. They literally went to a large language model, ChatGPT, and said, how to place tariffs on the entire world. And they just copy and pasted it from ChatGPT, meaning no economists looked at this list. No experts, no business leaders, nobody with a clue what they're doing actually looked at this list of tariffs before Trump signed it. And this is going to be a shocker, guys. Trump is lying. So what is the actual tariff rates on average of Chinese imports from America? And it's 7.5. And Trump just put 67% tariffs on China. What's the actual rate from the European Union? Factor in all the different tariffs of American imports to the EU. The effective rate is 5.2%, and Trump just put 39% tariffs on the EU. The same is true for all of these countries. How is this possible? And the White House is so stupid, they released their formula how they came up with these percentages. And this has nothing to do with tariffs. They're not applying reciprocal tariffs on countries that have tariffs on the United States. They're using trade imbalances. So the trade deficit with China is $291 billion, and they divided that by imports from China, $433 billion. This gets the number of 67%, which was too high for Trump, so they arbitrarily divided it by 2 to be nice, and the new number is 34%. This is how stupid everyone in the White House is and how they came up with these numbers. And this completely ignores the fundamentals of international trade. And I can explain to you a problem that people in MAGA are too stupid to understand. But because the United States is such a large country, over 300 million, we are likely to have a trade deficit with most nations that are smaller. And I'll give you the example of Switzerland. What is there in Switzerland that Americans want to buy? Chocolates, pocket knives, I don't know. But there are 300 million people in America, or greater, that can purchase items from Switzerland. But there's only 8 million people in Switzerland that can buy stuff from the United States. I understand it's competitive, but it's not equal. You can't compare the spending habits of over 300 million people versus a smaller group of 8 million. Because the larger country, the larger group is always going to have more buying and more spending power. When you look at a trade deficit, you have to look at, I would argue, maybe the per capita rates. But the people in the Trump administration are so stupid, they're just looking at the raw numbers. And they're saying, we have a trade imbalance with Ecuador. We have a trade imbalance with Peru and Switzerland and Vietnam. And it's because they're smaller countries. We still benefit from trade. It makes markets more efficient. People in Vietnam are making stuff for wages that no American would want to do it. Americans don't want to pick lettuce in the fields. Americans don't want to work in textiles. They don't want to work in assembly lines putting together plastic toys. But Donald Trump is destroying all of this. He is completely destroying all international supply chains. So the stock market is crashing. The stock market and the economy are two different things. I am going to give a disclaimer. But what the stock market tries to do, on average, is predict what will the economy be doing in 9 months. It is the canary in the coal mine. It is a future indicator. And since the peak on February 19th, the US stock market has dropped in a month and a half, 17%. And there's only one cause. Donald Trump being an idiot, not knowing what he's doing, and making up imaginary numbers to place tariffs on everyone and everything. And I have to remind my fellow Americans that a tariff is a tax that Americans pay. Donald Trump just raised taxes on everyone to the largest degree, probably in US history. We don't know how bad things are going to get if Donald Trump doesn't back down and give up on this disastrous plan. Now, I used to be a finance YouTuber. If you go back on my channel and look at my content from 4 years ago, I was trading options, talking about individual stocks, doing technical and quantitative analysis, so I have a basic understanding of what's going on here. And I think the market, I predicted this a couple weeks ago, there was going to be a huge sell-off. But we're still in an uptrend. Like, that's the shocking thing, is that the market was so overvalued and overbought because people were so optimistic about the American economy that the US stock market can keep selling off, and we're still technically in an uptrend. So if the S&P 500 dips below 5,000, I think there's going to be a lot of people who will then choose to buy in, and that's your new starting points. You know, it's all sky's the limit from there, but I think the US stock market is going to bottom out when the S&P gets close to 5,000. It's then just going to chop sideways probably for a long time until Donald Trump is removed from office, because the guy's an idiot and he is a one-man wrecking crew of absolutely everything. This is the thoughts from Adam Kinzinger. He's a former Republican congressman, and he thinks this is the beginning of the end of MAGA. No amount of division, fear-mongering lies, and cheap lines will overcome the fact that you just took many people's prosperity away just because it makes you feel powerful. Mark my words, this is the beginning of the end. Trump's approval rating before the stock market crashed 17%, it was already at 43. So we're going to get the new presidential approval rating next week, after this weekend. And yeah, Trump's going to be already under 40% net approval rating. And when you specifically ask Americans, how do you think Trump is handling the cost of living, inflation, it's now at 30%. And once again, this is before the last 2 days in the disastrous stock market. So Trump is just lighting all of his political capital on fire. Whatever positivity or goodwill the American people had with Trump when he took office 2 months ago, it's gone. He is now down to his insane cult base. Every fair-minded American who is capable of independent thought has realized that this is an absolute nightmare. Donald Trump is an idiot. He's not going to do anything positive for anyone other than himself and his billionaire friends like Elon Musk. And Trump's advisors can't even make a coherent argument. Trump is sending out his lackeys to go on the cable news networks, and none of them can make a persuasive argument on why Trump is doing this. Here is the Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, on Fox News, responding to Trump's tariffs on everything.
We're setting the stage for long-term economic growth, that we were on our way to a financial crisis. You know, I used to teach the history of financial crises, and with that gigantic government spending, it was unsustainable. You look back in 1998, you look back in 2007, right before it looked great, that everything collapsed. So, I mean, it looked great right before everything collapsed. So we have taken us off that trajectory, and we are putting ourselves back onto a sound trajectory.
So that is the U.S. Treasury Secretary saying we had to crash the stock market today because in the future, at some point, it was going to crash on its own. Like, if this is deliberate and it's long-term beneficial, then why didn't Trump warn anyone? Like, Trump could have told his supporters, hey, maybe sell all your stocks because I'm about to tank the market to fix everything long-term. Like, nobody thinks that way. Nobody believes him. So Trump's supporters, who are not full-blown believers in a cult, yeah, they're all turning on Trump. This is Dave Portnoy with Barstool Sports. He's a very popular social media influencer. He trades stocks. And he announced today, or this was Thursday, he was down in his brokerage account $7 million.
I almost tweeted out, Dave, how much are you down right now and today? 7 million. I'm down $7 million in stocks and crypto. And it's tariff city. Trump has put his tariffs all over the place. I've been trying to understand them. I don't. Like, it's more a trade deficit tariff to me. Like, hey, we get this much shit from you and you get this much from us. Let's even that up. Let's get some wacky formula and do tariffs. And everything's in the shitter because of it.
So that is Dave Portnoy not understanding what Trump is trying to do. Nobody in MAGA understands it. Nobody can effectively explain it. And they're all losing money. So they're pissed off. So I've been seeing a lot of conservative or MAGA social media influencers turning on Trump in the last 2 days. Ben Shapiro put out a video. Rand Paul is speaking out against it. Mike Pence is dunking on Trump. Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson said he can never support what Trump is doing. This is causing division, and I honestly think Trump might back down in like a week. I think the sell-off is going to continue, and Trump, is desperate for people's approval and praise, especially his own base. And I think he's going to claim some kind of imaginary victory and then undo everything he did. I don't know. How does this concern Russia and Ukraine? Well, first of all, the EU is getting 20%, Ukraine is getting 10%, and Russia is getting nothing. No tariffs on Russia. Isn't that nice? What is Ukraine's reaction? And Ukraine's exports to the United States is $874 million, and Ukraine imports from the United States $3.4 billion. So the United States has a trade surplus with Ukraine. We are making money by having as much trade as possible with Ukraine, and Donald Trump hates this. So he placed 10% tariffs on Ukraine, meaning that if people in America want to import anything from Ukraine, it's not a lot, but it's going to cost more, which will hurt Ukraine's exports. Ukraine doesn't really care. This doesn't really affect their situation too much, so they're not going to complain about it. But you have to ask the question, what is up with these percentages of hostile countries getting more leniency than our democratic allies? 17% tariffs on Israel, but only 10% on Iran, 10% on Ukraine, 0% on Russia, 25% on South Korea, 0 for North Korea. Here are the thoughts from Ambassador McFowle. The United States won the Cold War because we had strong allies. We had trade and investment between capitalist countries. We promoted our ideas. Democracy was better than communism. We invested in R&D, research and development, gave us the best technology over the Russians. And we had a strong economy that supported a strong military. Trump is radically and purposely undermining all of these to weaken and destroy the United States. And you got to ask the question, why did we put sanctions on penguins and a U.S. military base in the Indian Ocean, but not Russia, not Belarus, not North Korea? They used ChatGPT to generate that list of countries. They went through the list and they removed authoritarian regimes. They removed dictatorships. Will Russia come out a winner in Trump's trade wars? And this actually might be disastrous for Russia, and that's not even Trump's goal. Just the oil and gas revenue from Russia, as of March, before Trump destroyed the global economy, it had already fallen 17% year over year. So with the stock market collapsing, I went to check on the price of oil, and check this out. The price of oil globally is now at a 52-week low. You can see on the charts, it took a huge nosedive. Basically, if economic activity slows down or reduces, demand for oil and energy also goes down. So we're now, we can zoom out here and I can show you the chart. The price of oil collapsed under COVID. We then fast forward to Russia's invasion and the price of oil peaked. 66, that's basically a 4-year low. This isn't a 52-week low. The price of oil today is at a 4-year low because of Donald Trump. And the price of oil that Russia gets from the Urals is always at a discount. So Russia's now below $50 a barrel, or close to $50 a barrel. I've told you guys a couple times, Donald Trump could trigger a financial collapse of Russia without even intending to. And this is the good news. This is the only good news I have for you about all of this in today's video. Putin envoy confirms visit to the United States for talks with the White House. Even though Trump's been president for months now, Putin appointed a special envoy to the United States. His name is Kirill Dmitriev, and this guy is the head of Russia's direct investment fund. He is the highest-ranking Russian official to visit the United States since 2022. And he's in the United States to sweet-talk Donald Trump, not about peace, but about a minerals deal. Russia and the United States discuss rare earth metals cooperation. Trump is trying to sign a mineral deal with Russia to help Russia extract their natural resources and get them out to world markets. So we know what Ukraine's going to do. The Treasury Secretary is saying that a Ukrainian delegation is going to visit the United States this week or next to sign the mineral deal, but this isn't going to happen. The mineral deal is dead. I think President Zelensky is stalling for as much time as possible, hoping that the political situation in the United States changes or the political situation in Russia changes. But this is a mafia shakedown. The United States is just trying to extort Ukraine for as much as they can get. At the same time, they're trying to get as much as they can from the Russians. I'm sorry. To my international viewers, as an American, I apologize that we let someone so stupid and corrupt be elected twice here in the United States. So here are a couple more headlines I just want to share with you. U.S. defense boss Pete Hegseth to boycott Ukraine military support summit for the first time ever. For the first time in over 3 years, the U.S. Secretary of Defense will not be at the monthly Ramstein meeting to coordinate support and aid for Ukraine. The United States is giving up on support and aid for Ukraine. Radio Liberty says U.S. cut off its Russia broadcast. Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty reach about 50 million people in countries including Belarus, China, Iran, and Russia, seeking to counter official state propaganda. Trump tried to defund and fire everyone at Radio Free Europe. A U.S. judge halted that because he can't do that without a vote from Congress. That's illegal. So the U.S. government literally switched off the satellites that transmitted its Russian language programming into Russia. Trump tried to defund it. He tried to fire all the journalists. And in the end, he just turned off their satellites. I mean, this is Elon Musk's doing, but Trump approves everything. This is also a very sad story. Lithuania honors 4 U.S. soldiers who died in a training accident. This was a training accident in which 4 U.S. soldiers, their vehicle went off the road and fell into a swamp. And I want to thank the people of Lithuania for giving these service members an honorable return home. I can share with you some of these pictures as hundreds of citizens of Lithuania showed up to show their appreciation and support for U.S. forces in the Baltics. Trump and Pete Hegseth are trying to figure out how to withdraw all American forces from the Baltics. But where's Trump? And Trump decided not to attend the dignified transfer of soldiers who died in Lithuania. These 4 service members their bodies are being flown home to Dover Air Force Base. Trump had the opportunity to see their bodies returned and meet with the families, and he declined. Trump doesn't care about anyone in the military, and he doesn't care if they die, because he wanted to go golfing. This is what Trump does every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Trump, on average, spends 3 to 4 days a week at one of his resorts golfing, and he couldn't be bothered to recognize and honor the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform. I'm going to throw up, guys. Like, this is insane. I have to keep making these stories every single day, and still close to 40% of my fellow Americans defend this creature and celebrate him and worship him like he's a god. Okay. Let's continue. Ukraine braces for Russian spring offensive as Moscow reinforces troops with 150,000 soldiers. So spring is conscription season in Russia, and Russia just conscripted 160,000 new soldiers. But those 160 won't be used on the front lines as long as they remain conscripts. Russia is trying not to use conscripts, but we're now a year from last year's conscription, and what Russia has been doing is conscripting men, having them do their 1-year conscription service, and then at the end of the year, they force them to sign contracts. So think about the 140 or 150 who were conscripted 12 months ago. All of those men now are being pressured or forced to sign contracts with the Russian military, and they're now eligible to be sent to Ukraine. And this is what Russia is doing. It's really not going well. Dead Russian soldiers pile up in forests near Sumy as their offensive collapses. There's been a couple spectacular videos from the last week of the Russians getting annihilated on the battlefield, and they're doing so bad. Russian military bloggers are complaining. Why is this still happening? Why are vehicles bunched together on single-lane roads, attacking in broad daylight, just to get annihilated by FPVs and artillery? So I'll link this video down below. This is almost 3 minutes, and if you want to watch 58 Russian infantry, 3 tanks, 11 infantry fighting vehicles, and a car and a motorcycle get completely annihilated. This happens several times a day on the battlefield as Russia can't advance. This is an interesting video from Dmitry at War Translated, and I'll link this down below as well. But this is a GoPro video from a Russian soldier whose vehicle is blown up by an FPV drone. He runs away, he's injured, but we don't get a lot of footage from the Russian perspective within the combat zone because they're very careful to control all of those videos. Russia dropped a 3-ton bomb on a dam in Belgorod. This was a Russian dam in Russian-controlled territory, and for some reason they blew it up. There's no explanation why. I mean, Ukraine wasn't trying to advance in this region, so there wasn't a tactical reason. There's a video. I'll link it down below if you want to see the Russians blowing up their own dam. Large fire breaks out at a shipbuilding plant in northwestern Russia. This is the Onega shipbuilding plant in Petrozavodsk, and it's on fire. Could have been sabotage or just general Russian incompetence. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. According to the foreign minister for Czechia, they're saying that their ammo initiative has shifted the shell ratio from 10-1 to 2-1. So the Russians are still firing 2 for every 1 that Ukraine fires, but this is a lot better than it was a year ago. Leaps and bounds better than what it was 2 years ago. So the Czech ammunition initiative has secured monthly deliveries to Ukraine through September. This is good news. Ukraine is still getting artillery shells to stay competitive on the front. Slovakia's ammunition for Ukraine campaign smashes records, raises over 5 million euros despite government stance. Fico is in charge of the government of Slovakia, and they are pro-Russian and hostile towards Ukraine. So concerned citizens of Slovakia fundraised this money to chip into the Czech initiative. Thank you so much to the people of Slovakia, but screw your government. Poland delivers 5,000 more Starlink terminals to Ukraine, boosting the total number to 29,500. Thank you so much to the people of Poland. Denmark allocates new military aid package to Ukraine worth almost $1 billion. Thank you so much to the people of Denmark. Final video I want to play for you is a follow-up on our fundraising campaign from last year. This was the Christmas campaign. I do want to mention the Invictus campaign. This one's also completed. We went over $1.2 million. Thank you everyone who has donated or supported this campaign. It's still open if you want to go for a patch or you still want to kick in $5 or $10. We'll leave it open for another couple days. But this is the thank you video from the guys at the NAFO 69th Sniffing Brigade. This is the accountability video showing the 40 trucks that our YouTube channel fundraised for and delivered as part of the Christmas campaign that started in November. I put up the full video on the channel yesterday. It's only got 35,000 views, so if you want to just check it out for a little bit, you can. I'll link it down below. But let me play for you the beginning of this video, and the guys who edit this really do put in a lot of time and effort to make these videos look cool. Goosebumps, guys. I got goosebumps. Continue supporting Ukraine. Russia will be defeated. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth. Keep defending democracy.